She had just finished her daily jog. Sweat glistened on her brow as the sun dipped low behind the skyline. Her dogs, two large, alert German shepherds, moved beside her with perfect discipline. The kind of discipline that doesn't come from casual pet ownership. They were military working dogs. And she was no ordinary woman. Sergeant Maya Thompson was a decorated veteran. A woman who had given everything to serve her country overseas, only to return home and feel like a stranger in her own land. Today was supposed to be simple. A quick jog before heading home. But as she reached the sidewalk outside the park, everything changed. Without warning, four police cruisers came roaring down the street, tires screeching as they boxed her in. Officers leaped out, hands already on their weapons. "Put your hands where we can see them," one officer shouted, his voice laced with hostility. Maya froze, not out of fear, but out of disbelief. "What's going on?" she asked, raising her hand slowly. "You match the description of a suspect," another barked. Black female, early 30s, jogging gear, accompanied by two large dogs. Maya blinked. That could describe 100 women in this city. "This is harassment," she said firmly. "I'm a U.S. Marine. These dogs are military trained. You need to calm down." But the officers didn't care. They didn't care that she wore a veteran's patch on her sleeve. They didn't care that her ID was in a pouch around her neck. They didn't care that she was calm, controlled, and clearly no threat. All they saw was her skin. One officer crept forward, gun still raised. The dogs growled softly, low and controlled, eyes locked on the threat. Maya held them back with just a look. "Back up," she warned. "Do not take another step." The officer ignored her, and that's when the dogs moved. With military precision, they stepped in front of Maya, ears up, teeth bared, growls intensifying. It wasn't an attack. It was a warning, but it was enough. All four officers stopped dead in their tracks. These weren't ordinary dogs. Their posture, their synchronization, their discipline. This wasn't something you saw in house pets. "These dogs are military?" one officer finally asked, voice cracking slightly. "Yes," Maya said coldly. "And so am I. You're threatening a decorated Marine on a public sidewalk. Back off." Now, for a long, frozen moment, nobody moved. Then slowly, reluctantly, the officers lowered their weapons. Before Maya was ever a name the world would know, before her face would make headlines, she was a young woman from Georgia with a dream of serving her country. At 19, she enlisted in the Marines. She quickly earned a reputation not just for strength, but for strategy. Calm under pressure, fierce in the field. Her specialty? K-9 units. She trained dogs in war zones. She rescued them. She treated them like soldiers, like partners, not property. Two of those dogs, Titan and Echo, became her lifeline in Afghanistan. They had saved her once when a bomb-sniffing mission went wrong. She never forgot. And when her deployment ended, she did something few ever manage. She adopted both dogs after they were decommissioned. They weren't just companions. They were family. Trained, trusted, loyal. So when those same dogs stepped forward on that street, defending her from her own country's law enforcement, it wasn't random. It was justice. Someone had started filming. A bystander on the corner. The video captured everything. The sirens, the threats, the stance of the dogs, and the officer's hesitation. And then, Maya's words. "You're not going to shoot me. You're not going to shoot my dogs. I didn't survive a war to die on a sidewalk in my own country." Those words hit the internet like wildfire. Within hours, the video had millions of views. And the city was divided. By nightfall, the video had exploded. It was everywhere: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. Hashtags started trending across platforms. Hashtag Justice for Maya. Hashtag Military Woman Targeted. Hashtag Dogs of Valor. Hashtag Black Veterans Matter. Comment sections lit up. Some were horrified. She served our country, and this is how we treat her. Those dogs had more composure than the cops. How was this still happening in 2025? Others tried to justify the officer's actions. They were responding to a call. She matched a description. The dogs were threatening, but no one could deny one thing. The way those officers froze the moment her military dogs stepped forward said it all. They didn't freeze because she matched a description. They froze because they were afraid of what they didn't understand. They were afraid of a black woman in control. A black woman who wasn't afraid. A black woman who had authority. And now, the country was watching. CNN, MSNBC, local and national outlets. Black Marine surrounded by police, protected by her military dogs. Decorated veteran confronted by racist cops in broad daylight. Her name, Maya Thompson, was suddenly known coast to coast. And while Maya stayed silent, letting the footage speak for itself, the pressure on city officials grew by the hour. Inside the local precinct, chaos was brewing. The chief of police, Chief Raymond Fulton, slammed his fist on the desk. Who gave the order to detain her? An uncomfortable silence filled the room. She matched a description, sir, one of the officers said weakly. Matched? Or did you profile her? Fulton snapped. You surrounded a U.S. Marine. On camera. With drawn weapons. She had dogs, sir. We didn't know they were trained. Chief Fulton stared at him. You were more afraid of her dogs than you were of her. No one answered. Meanwhile, Maya sat quietly in her apartment. Her dogs curled at her feet. The blinds were drawn. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing. She didn't want fame. She didn't want headlines. She wanted justice and peace. Her inbox was flooded with interview requests, speaking invitations, even brand offers. But she ignored them all. I didn't do this for a show, she murmured to Titan and Echo. I just wanted a normal life. But for black veterans like Maya, normal was often a dream. Even after serving the country with honor. Even after putting her life on the line overseas. She still wasn't seen as safe on her own streets. This wasn't the first time Maya had faced this kind of judgment. During basic training, she was told she was too aggressive when giving commands. When she excelled in combat simulations, some whispered she was too intimidating for a woman. And when she applied to be a K-9 handler, a white male sergeant told her, those dogs don't listen well to women like you. But Maya didn't back down. She doubled down. She became one of the most respected handlers in her unit. Because she understood something the others didn't. Dogs didn't care about skin color. They responded to trust, command, respect. It was people who struggled to see past the surface. By the third day after the incident, a protest was forming. Hundreds gathered outside City Hall. Many brought their own dogs. Some wore service vests. Others wore ribbons in solidarity. A banner stretched across the crowd. We salute SGT. Maya Thompson. People chanted. Justice for Maya. Veterans deserve better. Protect black women. Inside City Hall, Mayor Linda Watts was forced to respond. At a press conference, she stepped up to the podium. We are currently conducting a full investigation into the incident involving Sergeant Maya Thompson, she began. Let me be clear. We take this matter extremely seriously. This city owes her more than an apology. But words were cheap. The people wanted action. On the sixth day, Maya finally agreed to an exclusive interview with a black female journalist from a local independent channel. Sitting calmly in a simple blue shirt, Maya spoke quietly but powerfully. I didn't survive IEDs and firefights to come back home and get treated like a criminal on my sidewalk, she said. They saw my skin before they saw my service. They saw my dogs as threats, not as heroes. That tells me everything I need to know. The reporter asked her what she wanted now. Maya didn't flinch. I want accountability. Not just for me, but for every black veteran who's treated like a suspect when they take off the uniform. And I want people to know these dogs, they weren't just defending me. They were defending the dignity of every black woman in this country. The morning after Maya's interview aired, pressure hit the city's law enforcement like a thunderclap. The mayor's office ordered an immediate internal affairs investigation into the conduct of the 4 officers involved in the incident. They were placed on administrative leave, but the public wasn't satisfied, because everyone knew what that usually meant. Time passes. The pressure fades. Officers return to duty. Business as usual. But this time, people weren't letting it go. Veterans organizations across the country, black, white, Latino, Asian, began speaking out. Statements poured in from the National Association of Black Veterans, the Retired K-9 Handlers Association, Women of the Armed Forces, even active duty soldiers who remained anonymous. One tweet from a currently serving Marine went viral. "I'd rather follow Sergeant Maya Thompson into combat than any of the officers who pulled a gun on her." The city was in the spotlight now, and no one could hide from it. Scene shift. Interview with one of the officers leaks. Narrator. A few days later, a leaked internal affairs transcript sent shockwaves through the internet. It was a recorded interview with one of the 4 officers, Officer Bradley Kent. He sounded nervous, panicked even. "I didn't know who she was," he said. "I swear I wasn't trying to be racist. But those dogs, they move like SEAL team dogs. I thought they were about to attack." The investigator pushed back. "You feared the dogs more than the woman?" "I mean, yeah, the woman was calm, confident. But the dogs, it was like they knew what we were going to do before we did it." And that was exactly Maya's point. They were trained to assess threats and act when necessary. And in that moment, she wasn't the threat. They were. One morning, Maya found a letter slipped under her door. It was handwritten, formal, and surprising. It was from General Samuel Pierce, a retired 4-star general who had commanded combat operations in Iraq. He'd seen the video. He wrote, "You led with discipline. You held your ground without violence. Your dog showed restraint I've never seen outside active war zones. You are a credit to your uniform, even when out of it." He ended the letter with something else. "We need your voice in places that matter. If you're willing, I'd like to sponsor your nomination for a civilian position in the Department of Justice's Police Oversight Committee." Maya froze reading it. She had never thought of stepping into politics or policy. She wasn't a politician. She was a soldier. But maybe, just maybe, this was the next battlefield. Back when she was stationed at Camp Lejeune, Maya developed a unique philosophy for training her K-9 partners. She didn't believe in breaking a dog's spirit. She believed in teaching them to protect, not attack. She taught them to think, not just react. That's why Titan and Echo didn't bite or lunge that day. They stood. They observed. They waited for a command that never came, because Maya's silence was the command. She used to tell new handlers, "If your dog reacts before your mind does, that's not training, that's a problem." Her calm under pressure had saved lives in combat, and now it had exposed the cracks in a broken system back home. The House Committee on Veterans Affairs held a public hearing. Maya was invited to testify. The room was filled with military leaders, legal experts, and activists. But all eyes were on the woman in uniform who had stood alone on a city street with only her voice and her dogs. Maya stood tall. She didn't read from notes. She spoke from memory, from the soul. "I was not afraid when 4 guns were pointed at me. I was trained not to be. What scared me was realizing that my training, my medals, my rank, none of it mattered when they looked at me and saw only a threat. My dogs, who never asked to serve, were the only ones that stood between me and becoming a hashtag." There was silence in the room. Some looked down, some wiped away tears, and some, finally, started to understand. 1 week later, a knock came at Maya's door. She opened it to see a tall woman in a gray pantsuit, stern-faced but warm-eyed. "I'm Special Agent Denise Porter," she said. "Department of Justice. I've been sent here to officially offer you the role of Deputy Advisor to the National Police Oversight Task Force." Maya blinked. "You serious?" "Very. We've seen what you could do with dogs. Now we want to see what you can do with people." The building was cold, professional, and humming with bureaucracy. Maya stepped inside, her military posture unshaken, her eyes sharp. She wasn't here to impress anyone. She was here because the system needed eyes like hers. Eyes that saw what too many chose to ignore. As she was led to her new office on the 7th floor of the DOJ headquarters, Maya passed rows of framed photos, marble walls, and tight-lipped officials. It was a far cry from the dusty bases in Kandahar or the training fields at Camp Pendleton. But this was another battlefield, and she was ready. Inside a glass-walled conference room sat a table full of veterans, civil rights attorneys, data scientists, and former police officers. The chairwoman, a seasoned advocate named Dr. Renee Voss, gestured for Maya to take a seat. "Sergeant Thompson," she said, "we brought you here for one reason. We've studied data. We've written reports. But we've never had someone who's lived it, stood on both sides, military and civilian, black and trained in command. We need your eyes. Your instinct. Maya simply nodded. I'm not here for politics, she said. I'm here for justice. The team agreed unanimously to give Maya her own task force, Operation Clean Sight, dedicated to reviewing body cam footage for racial bias and excessive force. For the next several weeks, Maya worked through hours of footage. She watched routine traffic stops turn hostile the moment a black face appeared. She watched officers escalate calm situations because of fear or prejudice. She watched how military veterans of color, just like her, were often doubted, dismissed, or disrespected once out of uniform. And every time she paused a video, she saw herself, not just in the victims, but in the silence of the system. One morning, during a roundtable discussion with city law enforcement leaders, Maya found herself face-to-face with Officer Daniel McClure, president of the police union. He was old school, white, grizzled, and not impressed by Maya's resume. You know, he said, smirking, it's easy to criticize from behind a desk. Maya didn't blink. I've served in active war zones. I've had RPGs fly over my head while I pulled injured soldiers into a Humvee. Don't talk to me about comfort. McClure scoffed. Cops have it hard too. Maya leaned forward. And yet you're not the ones getting surrounded for jogging in your own neighborhood. I am. Your definition of hard comes with a badge. Mine came with body armor and a dog leash. The room went quiet. McClure didn't respond, because there was no comeback for truth. While Maya worked within the halls of justice, another movement was brewing outside. A nationwide petition began to circulate. Award Titan and echo the Congressional K-9 Medal of Honor. Within 2 weeks, it had over 1.2 million signatures. A local congresswoman introduced legislation to formally recognize the 2 military dogs for heroic restraint and defense of civil liberties. Maya smiled when she heard the news. Those dogs deserve more than medals, she said. They deserve to live in a country where they don't have to save their handler from the police. 3 months after the incident, Maya returned to the same sidewalk where it all started. The air was cool. Titan and Echo walked proudly at her side. This time, there were no police cruisers. No shouting. No panic. Just families jogging, people walking their dogs, and a new mural painted on the wall nearby. It showed a silhouette of Maya, standing tall, with her dogs at her side. Beneath, it were the words, calm, command, courage. Maya stood in front of it quietly. She didn't take a photo. She didn't need to. She was already living the legacy. The room was packed. The city held its breath. After months of national pressure, the 4 officers involved in the incident that shook the country were now standing before a public disciplinary review board. Seated before them were members of the police commission, civil rights attorneys, and veterans, including Maya. Yes, she was there, not for revenge, but for truth. The charges: excessive use of force, racial profiling, violation of constitutional rights. Each officer had legal counsel. The city's police union fought hard behind the scenes, pushing to minimize punishment. But the video footage, the indisputable evidence, was projected on a massive screen behind them. The moment the dogs stepped forward, the moment the officers froze, the moment Maya stood firm with nothing but calm and a pair of loyal protectors at her side. It played without sound, but it didn't need any. Silence was the soundtrack of injustice. One by one, the officers testified. Some showed regret. Some blamed training. One even blamed adrenaline. But the truth was clear. None of them saw Maya as a fellow American, a citizen, a soldier, a sister, a human being. They saw her as a threat before she ever opened her mouth. Maya was called to testify last. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. They came at me with fear. I responded with discipline. They had power. I had presence. And if my dogs hadn't stood up, I don't know if I'd still be here to speak these words. The board deliberated for hours. In the end, 2 officers were fired. One was suspended indefinitely. One was reassigned, stripped of badge and rank. Justice? Maybe not enough. But it was a start. Just as things seemed to settle, tragedy struck. One night, Titan began to slow down during his evening walk. His breathing labored, his steps unsure. Maya rushed him to a military vet clinic. The diagnosis was sudden and heartbreaking: degenerative myelopathy, a terminal neurological disease. Titan had served her for over a decade. He had survived war, protected her from bullets, and now his own body was turning against him. For days, Maya stayed by his side, feeding him by hand, whispering stories from Afghanistan, brushing his fur while Echo curled up close. And then, one morning, he didn't wake up. Maya held him in her arms, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. For the first time since this all began, she wept, not from fear or anger, but from pure loss. Titan was more than a dog. He was her partner, her guardian, her soldier. She buried him in a special veterans cemetery for K-9 units. The flag that draped his casket was folded and handed to her by a retired general. As the trumpet played, Maya stood at attention. No salute, just honor. Echo sensed the loss. His mood changed. He would sit for hours by Titan's bed, sniffing the empty space where his brother once laid. But he never left Maya's side. Maya took time off from her duties at the DOJ. She needed to heal. But the tragedy didn't break her. It focused her. She released a statement to the press. Titan gave everything to this country, to me, and to justice. His legacy will not end with a funeral. It will become a movement. A month later, the Titan Act, short for Training and Integrity for Tactical Animal Navigators, was introduced in Congress. It aimed to provide federal funding for retired military dogs, mandate emotional trauma support for handlers, establish a national database tracking police behavior with K-9 veterans. The bill had bipartisan support because Titan wasn't just Maya's dog anymore. He was America's symbol of restraint, loyalty, and power without aggression. As spring returned to the city, Maya did something unexpected. She adopted a new dog, a young Belgian Malinois named Valor. He was still learning, still growing, but Maya trained him with the same patience, precision, and pride she'd always had. Echo, though older, seemed to accept him, like a soldier passing the torch. Now when Maya walked the streets, people no longer whispered or stared in fear. They saluted. They nodded. They respected. The envelope arrived with no warning. It was heavy, sealed, embossed with the presidential seal. Inside was a formal invitation, inviting Sergeant Maya Thompson to speak at the White House National Forum on Police Accountability and Civil Rights Reform. She stared at it for a long moment, not out of pride, but reflection. There was a time when her name didn't mean anything to the people in power. Now, she was being asked to address the highest office in the land. She packed one bag. An Echo, calm, aging, but ever loyal, walked beside her as she boarded the plane to D.C. The room was filled with national leaders, senators, state attorneys general, military commanders, and social justice advocates from all over the country. Maya didn't wear a suit. She wore her uniform, clean, pressed, with every ribbon and honor displayed proudly. As she approached the podium, the audience stood, not for tradition, but for truth. Maya spoke with the same composure she had shown on the sidewalk that day. I didn't ask to be a symbol. I didn't ask for a viral video. All I wanted was a jog, a peaceful moment in a park. But what happened to me wasn't about one moment. It was about a broken system built on fear, held up by silence. We can't reform what we refuse to confront. She paused, looked directly at the Attorney General. You want real change? Fund training that teaches courage, not control. Create accountability that doesn't start after a funeral. And stop treating blackness like a threat instead of a badge of humanity. The room stayed quiet, not because they disagreed, but because they finally understood. But not everyone was proud. Behind the scenes, Maya had made enemies. Emails leaked. Union members threatened boycotts. One police union in another state called her a dangerous figure pushing anti-cop rhetoric. Online trolls flooded her page. You're dividing the country. You're making cops the enemy. You're just an angry black woman with a dog. But Maya didn't back down. She posted just one message. I'm not anti-cop. I'm anti-injustice. And if that offends you, maybe it's because you're used to getting away with it. A few weeks after her White House speech, Echo, her last surviving battle partner, grew ill. Age had caught up with him. His breathing slowed. His eyes dulled. but he never left her side. Maya held his paw in the vet's office, whispering softly, "You did good, soldier. You saved me more times than I can count." As Echo took his final breath, Maya kissed his head. 2 dogs, 2 heroes, gone, but not forgotten. She buried Echo beside Titan at the K-9 memorial site. This time, there was no trumpet, just Maya, alone, saluting. 1 year to the day after the sidewalk incident, Maya launched the Maya Thompson Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting retired military and service dogs, advocating for Black veterans facing discrimination, providing K-9 therapy and training for underserved communities. The foundation's motto? Discipline, dignity, defense. It began with just a few volunteers, but within months, donations poured in. Celebrities endorsed it. Veterans supported it. Even former critics came around. Maya was no longer just a former Marine. She was a movement. 5 years later, a young Black girl walked through a military base in Texas. She passed a bronze statue. It was Maya, standing tall, one hand on the head of Titan, the other resting on Echo. Their stance is calm, unbending. Beneath the statue, an inscription read, "She commanded with calm. They stood with courage. And together, they changed the world." The girl looked up, eyes wide. A female drill sergeant walked by. "That's Sergeant Thompson," she said. "You ever want to know what real strength looks like, remember her name." So when they surrounded her with fear, she stood with truth. When they raised their voices, she stayed silent and let her presence speak. When they pulled their weapons, her dogs stepped forward, and the world changed. Because sometimes all it takes is 1 woman, 2 dogs, and a whole lot of courage. Like my video and subscribe my channel for more daily videos.